News in the state today, the Commissioner of Education, Margie Van Diepen, resigned. So we have a live mic and coming to you straight out of Northeast Missouri. Senator Cindy O'Laughlin, the full leader of the Missouri State Senate. Senator, welcome in.
Thanks for having me on.
So I've told people before, you know, is competition in the news business hard? I'm like, well, sometimes, but mostly just against your Facebook page is more interesting. Most of the stuff we can write. Had a few opinions about the commissioner. Uh, I don't think today's news is something you were dreading. I'm not sure it wasn't something you've suggested might need to happen in the past. Now that the resignation is there, what does the state board need to look at going forward in finding a replacement?
Well, I think the reality is that our outcomes have been going downhill, certainly since COVID, but even before that. So the outcomes are not what we would want them to be. I think that some of our schools, maybe many of them, feel that they don't get the support that they need. And as you know, and I think probably everyone knows, I have strong thoughts about education because I think it's the foundation for success for everyone. And we have really an entire generation of people who are having difficulty reading and doing math. So to me, we need to move a different direction. I've been saying that now. This is my 5th year in the Senate, and I think I've said it ever since the 2nd year. And so I'm not really surprised that the commissioner resigned. I think that, she's had some health problems. Hopefully those are getting better. Maybe she's just looking to go, in a new direction. And I think Missouri needs to go in a new direction.
There's several spots on that State Board of Education that could be filled by Governor Parson. Those spots would have to be confirmed by the Missouri Senate that you're the floor leader of. What are some traits the governor should look towards in folks that would be good to sit on that board?
Well, one of my I don't want to say complaints, maybe criticisms of government in general, is that they kind of operate in a little bubble where results aren't really how we measure what we're investing money in. And I think that kind of holds true sometimes across all of our departments, certainly in education. We spend billions of dollars on education. I do believe, being on that state board, that people need to understand what is happening in schools. And I've never really been an advocate of appointing people to a board just so, they can say, look, I'm on the State Board of Education. It needs to be people that are engaged, understands how critical outcomes are, and that are willing to have an open mind, understand that competition is a part of life. And I think that has to be included. So I think there's a lot of things we need to look at.
I watched at Mizzou. It was the living definition of a dumpster fire. It had no leadership, completely rudderless. Then they came in and hired Dr. Choi. I'm no expert at colleges, but it feels like almost every possible metric of Mizzou is much better because of change of leadership. I look at these schools. You go to a place like Kennett, the superintendent's a great guy. The community surrounds behind him. The results are there. You look at a place like Poplar Bluff with a failing leader, just completely probably the bottom of the barrel, and the school suffers. It just seems like a lot of these come down to a common denominator of who's running the thing and who's in leadership. And there's a lot of other factors that matter, but I'm not sure anything matters more than getting a good person at the top.
I totally agree. And, I've mentioned that several times. And I think sometimes people say, well, whoever the commissioner is really does not have a direct effect on the outcomes of schools. Well, if that's the case, we don't need a commissioner of education.
Well, I tell you, I've been a big defender of the current system, and I've listened to other people that I respect have criticisms. And at the end of the day, I think they were right. I think to me, just this is my simple hillbilly drinking on my stein of knowledge here, just a Southeast Missourian to a Northeast Missourian. It feels like the entire system is set up. You find the kind of the dumbest, most kind of backward, corrupt, and they all just cover each other's hind end in a big circle. No, it's nobody's fault. Oh, that's not what we do. No, we can't speak out on this. We can't do this. And it is just a system where literally thousands of people are in a system set up to cover up the dumbest and the most incompetent.
You know, some of my closest, I would call them advisors, have been superintendents. Senator Esslinger is one of those.
Sure.
Um, Representative Brad Pollitt is one. Representative Paula Brown she hasn't been
Yeah.
a superintendent, but she's been a teacher. Senator Lauren Arthur.
Mhm.
I mean, all of those people have knowledge, and I do think you make a mistake if you don't try to have an open mind and listen to everybody. I always say I'm willing to listen to anyone, but the reality is that we are graduating kids who can't read and do math, and there's no excuse for that. So those schools who are run by superintendents who basically just want to wait their time out, and let's remember they can retire pretty darned early.
Yeah.
If those schools want to have that kind of leadership, we need leadership at the top that says no, that's not acceptable. We're going to go a different way. We're not going to have that.
And that's been the missing link, I think, is, I mean, if you walk over that Desi building and you have a legitimate problem, it's just like this. It's not me. I can't say, well, I would hurt this person's feelings. Well, I don't want to make this person mad. None of them can make a decision about anything except for the fact that move along, there's nothing to see here, everything's fine, and give me more money. That's it. That's the only thing they can agree on is more money, please. And I tell you, it's interesting. Do you have some folks in mind that you might suggest they should take a look at that job?
Yes. One of them would be Tiffany Anderson. She was a superintendent at the Jennings School District. I like her. She's very focused on result, and she doesn't use the 1,001 excuses for why kids can't achieve. And I think people need to understand that she took a school that is in one of the poorest neighborhoods in our state, with kids who, don't have the kind of support they need. And she figured out what needed to happen, and she made it happen. And I feel like that's the kind of person that we need. I think that she would be great. I also I hate to mention Doug Libla's name here in a good way. No, not really. He's a friend of mine. He introduced me to Frank Killian. I like Frank a lot, just like Tiffany Anderson. He has operated several different sizes of schools, and his schools have achieved great things. So he also is focused on results, and
Was he at Richland?
Yes.
Down Stoddard County, yeah.
Yes. So, but he has also been a superintendent in bigger schools that were kind of on a failing trajectory. So it isn't like it can't be done. Excuse me. And it's not like we don't know people that can do it. I mean, we have people that have done it, and that's what we need.
If you look at, you've actually toured a lot of schools. That's one thing that some people don't know, is you've actually been to, I don't know how many schools, but I've seen photographs of you at least a dozen that I personally know of. What is the common denominator of something? You're a business person, right? If you went into Desi right now, what would be one or two things you would do to say, okay, this is common sense, we need to do this?
Well, I mean, I think one of the things that I think could be changed, we have all of these different silos of people there. I'm not convinced that we need all of those silos of people. I know that they come up with the Missouri Learning Standards, and those things have multiplied from, I don't know where they started, but my goodness, it seems like there's a million of them now. So teachers who seem to be at the bottom of the list of importance, and they should be at the top, are being asked to teach all of these different things. And in the meantime, we lose sight of the things that are important. So I think that I would, look at each of those silos and say, is this really necessary? I would look at other states where education is producing a lot better outcomes. And there's no question I would downsize that department.
It's so interesting to me. I mean, you look at the things that schools have caught a lot of grief on, equity, inclusion day, or diversity day, or whatever. If you ask folks that make a living in that field, they'll tell you America is the most racist ever been, and on and on and on. So those things aren't working. But if you're at Columbia, you can't get in trouble for your diversity day if you don't have diversity day. If you just teach math that day, if you just teach math, you're probably going to avoid a bunch of these pitfalls.
So the diversity topic, years ago, I was on the school board here, and They about the time they started talking about multiculturalism and people of different backgrounds. And at the time I said, I don't think that we should be going this route. I think that this is going to result in something we don't want. And the reason I say that is not that we can't appreciate people with differences. I mean, that's what makes a good idea great sometimes. It's that we have divided people and said, okay, if you're from this background, then you're in this little group. And if you're in this background, you're in another little group. And we're not all Americans, and we're not all trying to achieve the same goal. So we have, in the name of inclusion, promoted exclusion and created a lot of hard feelings between people. I would put an end to that.
So let's talk about another issue you've shared your thoughts on. It's a time of use electric billing. Tell folks, just a person that pays an electric bill, but they're not a PSC energy policy expert. What is that time of use billing to start with?
Well, first of all, I think I need to say happy birthday to Scott Roop. I'm glad that his term has expired, but I know that he'll be moving on to something else. He's the chairman of the PSC.
Mm-hmm.
The time of use rates, in my opinion, and a lot of people agree with me, are designed around trying to promote you not using power when you most need it. So time of use rates from 4 to 8 p.m. At the lowest end were 4 times higher. And I think there were 4 different plans you could choose from. And at the high end were like 12 times higher. So this penalizes people when they're trying to run their household and do the things they need to do. And I'm very opposed to that. And if you look around the country, I think there are 2 states that have passed that. Others have tried, and the public doesn't want it. And why would they? We're already having a hard time with all of the inflationary pressures that we have. Why in the world would we now gouge all of our customers? And, I understand that they would like to transfer that over to the commercial side. This, of course, would increase people's costs to where maybe they decide they'll do business somewhere else. So the whole idea is terrible.
I've watched this. There is a movement to do this in other states, mostly, I think, probably more liberal states. But it just, to me, the way to convince people to do stuff, it's very heavy-handed. If you gave folks the option that you want your electric billed this way, well, you know what? It might work for some folks. And if I was drinking out of my stein of knowledge somewhere, let's say I was up at Lucky's, up in Edina, and we was having lunch, and I was like, oh, I saved $100 this last month on my energy bill because I checked this box. Well, you'd probably do it too because it would save you $100. But if I checked the box and it cost me an extra 50, I'm probably not going to do that. And to me, if it's such a great idea and it's going to save folks all this money, I promise you, Missourians are frugal. If you find a way they can save money at something, you ain't going to have to force them. They'll do it on their own.
The argument that I tried to make in the beginning was, look, if this is such a wonderful idea, then offer it, but let people opt in. But no, Scott's idea is it's a wonderful idea and everyone's going to love it. And that's why we're going to force you into it. And you can't.
It's got a European feel to it.
Yes.
It just kind of, in America, it just is counterintuitive to the American spirit. It's just kind of more European. I would tell Flat Doug that too. It just seems like it's just, there's something about it where we don't restrict, we expand.
Yes,
but in this case, it's kind of that European mindset,
We've kind of taken what I consider to be the greatest country on earth with great possibilities for people that want to work hard and be responsible for themselves. And we all of a sudden not all of a sudden, it's kind of come on for a long time, but we're turning our focus to, everyone that's living the kind of a lifestyle that makes sure that you can't really achieve what you'd like to. In other words, we don't talk about success. All we talk about is loss. And we need to turn that dynamic around.
So, it's tough to pass any bill through the Missouri Senate, as it should be. It's good for the folks that it's tough. Can you legislatively turn this around if the PSC doesn't roll this back?
Well, I mean, it has been rolled back. Now, what the thing that happened was the Office of Public Counsel, which is a group of lawyers who advise the commissioners, they themselves decided to file an appeal. And my understanding is that the commissioners will vote whether to accept or reject that. And then I think the next step is for it to go to a court of appeals if this little group decides to push it further. So, our attention is not only on the commissioners, but it's also on people who are unaccountable. And I think this OPC group is unaccountable. So there needs to be a way to bring them to account so that they are doing really what they're supposed to be doing. And, we sit around and think of ways to do that.
You know an old boy from Greene County that helps put that budget together. He might have some thoughts on how to make them accountable.
Yes.
He might get a few more gray hairs and that whiskers and that beard of his coming up with sharpening that pencil on that. I'm sure somebody will want that money. Speaking of, let's talk a little politics. Governor's race feels like it's heating up. Now they're out hollering at each other at events. It's kind of getting fun. You got a favorite in that governor's race yet?
Well, all of them have good ideas. And I think the deciding factor has to be, you can say, boy, I have a great idea, but I'd like to know what is your strategy to achieve that. And we'll see who produces a strategy that really can achieve what they say they want to do. It's easy to, identify what people want to have happen.
Sure.
But the difficulty lies in making it happen. So we'll see.
Everybody wants to own a business and wants to hire folks until it's time to make payroll. Then
right.
Rubber starts meeting the road.
Yeah.
Speaking of, there's I'm sure there's 33 other people that would like to take your job if you move up to pro tem. What's that field look like? What does it take? I don't think this is just shiny. I think objectively, folks notice a difference in the state Senate. Now you could point to whatever reasons, but the person in the chair gets credit. There was a difference in the state Senate. What is it important, some qualities you might suggest to your fellow senators to look for in selecting a new floor leader if you move up to the pro tem's job?
It's all about relationship. And we live in a time where everybody wants to, not everybody, but a lot of people want to throw bombs at the opposing side, and then that side throws bombs back. And I guess on my part, I have strong convictions about things. You have to decide what you can compromise on and what you can't. You also have to decide what you can realistically achieve. So I try to stay connected to each senator. I think a lot of them have ideas of moving up. I'm all for them. We actually do work hard, even though I know on the outside it doesn't appear that we do. And I think the biggest thing is you have to listen to people. You have to promote cordial relationships between senators. And in general, just try to keep the train on the track. And if you do that and you have some structure, then I think it can be done. Now, next year will be challenging. We have a lot of people running for higher office, and some of them like to talk a lot and get free ads on TV. And this can be kind of, I don't know, it tries the patience of a lot of people in there.
Are you saying you're not Darth Vader?
Right. I've already met with Darth too.
How it just feels in my gut. I get to sit up in the popcorn gallery and watch y'all all day, sometimes all night. It feels like session will be largely determined on your relationship with Senator Eichel. He's running for governor. He's the unofficial leader of a coalition of senators. He's very good very sharp on the floor. He will go to the floor and fight. It just kind of feels like the relationship you have with him and he has with you will probably define what gets done next year. Am I wrong?
No, no. I mean, we have kind of a like each other, hate each other relationship, but we don't let that hang on, So if there's a disagreement, which there's a lot of those, I don't sit around for the next 10 days and think about that. Each episode that we have is sort of confined to that one thing. And in my conversations with him and with the rest of the senators, I've said, look, let's think about the things that you want to get done. Let's think about the things that the rest of the people want to get done. There's a lot of overlap, and let's find a way to do that. And I think the way to do that is to not spend a lot of time on the floor, burning time talking. So you be honest with me, I'll be honest with you. And it's going to take a lot of patience.
It does feel like you start off with a lot of credibility with him. I think the 4 years before, leadership had just the fights had just it had worn things just raw. But it does feel like there's some credibility you have with him, and maybe he has with you.
Well, I mean, I made a few mistakes when I started as the floor leader, and I had to apologize to some people. And I think sometimes for senators that's hard, but it doesn't bother me. They're all smart people, and
Yeah.
I try to assure them that if I tell them something, you can count on that. If something were to change that, I'm going to come right back to you and tell you, so people know what they can depend on, and that's very important.
Well, Senator, we just got tired of waiting on sports betting, Kelton and I. So we've started on illegal sports book. I think last time Mizzou covered, so we won. Who did we have on with us last week, Kelton? The played us about Frank. He was part of the Young Republican event. He came and told us all about that, which is fun to hear about. So we have Mizzou -7 against South Carolina. You want in on it?
I'm not a gambler, so I hope Mizzou
we probably
wins.
aren't be either, but all right. Well, I'm gonna take Mizzou and give the points. Kelton, where are you at?
I'm going to take Mizzou.
Kelton's a homer. He's kind of a suck up. Yeah, Senator, we appreciate the time. It'll be very interesting to see. It feels like the time is right, not just at Desi. I think the time is right in Missourians' homes for a real conversation about what they want their schools to look like and what they want education to be. And it does feel like it's one of those things when you call for somebody to leave and now they're leaving. I do think the ball gets passed to you as far as, okay, you said some changes. Now, what do they look like? It's like you said, everybody knows what they want to see. How do you get there? As that unfolds, hope you'll come back and visit us here on This Week in Missouri Politics.
Thank you for having me on. I appreciate it, and I'm looking forward to the future of education.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you again.
Uh-huh.
That was Senator Cindy O'Laughlin, the floor leader of the Missouri State Senate. Here's the thing about her. This is just Scott Faughn's opinion. When she's talking, that's how she talks. Like if you're at a restaurant, if you're in the Senate, if you're in a hallway, if she's on the floor, if you're interviewing her, she's pretty much the exact same person. What you hear from her is candid, and she's called for some change in education. She called for a change at the top. I got to be honest with you. I was slow on some of these things. Not just slow. I was totally against the change. But I had the experience so many other folks have had, that one bad administrator. When you run into that one bad administrator who just thinks parents are just some problem in the way of how he's going to raise your kids, it changes you. It changes the whole dynamic. It is such a feeling of powerlessness against such a huge bureaucracy. And I'll tell you, she was right. All they do, there's thousands of people paid to go like this. It's not, I can't say anything. Oh, I don't want to hurt this person's feelings. Oh, if I say something, they'll say about me. Oh, it's not my job. It's not, it is a system that is just simply it passes more bucks than central bank. The buck stops here. It stops nowhere. It just doesn't. And you can't run. What you do is you take, like every organization, you have great superintendents. I've seen them. I've looked them in their eyes. Great superintendents, like at Kennett. You take it, and you're going to have in every scenario, you're 5% that's just not good. And then when they're not good, they say things to cover it up and they pass the buck. But I'll tell you the truth. The truth of the matter is, it's those 5% is going to be bad no matter what. You can't, it's just the law of averages. Bureaucrats, police officers, whatever it is. You're about 5% that's going to be a problem. Or they're at a bad time in their life and it's reflective in their job, whatever it is. It's that other 10% that if there was accountability, they would not turn into that 5%. That's the problem. When the buck stops nowhere, literally nowhere, then that 10% becomes that 5%. They go to that 5% class because it's so many people's job to cover up and just go on and on and on with. the system of just, no, it's not my job. I can't say anything. I don't want to hurt this person's feelings. It just doesn't end. She's right. There's big problems, and it's got to be, it's like everything in life. It takes your experience with that failed administrator for a year. Like, you're right. This just got to stop. I've seen it myself. She's great. There's just a common sense about her. And look, I don't even really understand time of use all that much, to be honest with you. But I'll tell you this: when she sets her mind on something, I wouldn't want to be on the other side of that. And I think the PSC, it's more of an OPC thing. Probably they're they're probably going to want to dig out a little bit, and then it'll be interesting to see. Kayla Hahn is very, very, very intelligent. One of the most intelligent people in state government. Real credit to the Public Service Commission. I would look to her and see how she handles this, because this is a legitimate just bomb handed to her. But she's smart. And again, I go back to, I think she had a good point. I think time of use billing is a national trend. I think it's certain that's going to come. I think trying it, I like to try it. To me, experimentation is a great thing. It's how you innovate. But I just tell you, Kelton, if we were over at High Street Pub, right, and you came and told me, hey, man, I checked this box online on my Ameren bill, and I've saved $30 this month, and then I saved $40 the next month. That's pretty great. You know what Scott Faughn would do, Kelton?
Probably check that box.
You wouldn't have to force me. I would go check the box because I'm cheap. So I just, to me, in my gut, you don't have to do some of the, if you have to force someone, I question it. If you have to force someone, I question it. Now, maybe it's going to work out great, but I tell you, she is the most influential legislator right now. I wouldn't want to be on the other side of her. With that said, we'll call Ashley Bax back in just a second. Shout out to so we mentioned a Doug Lively drop. Anytime there's a Doug Lively drop, I always think of Ashley Bax. And I'll tell you the greatest filibuster story of all time. She brought up Doug, my old senator. Love Doug. We need a Doug Lively sign here. Kelton, can you reach out to him? What we need in here is a Doug Lively sign. I would love to have one. That nothing would make my day more. The Stein's great, by Jim Murphy. Thank you for the Stein. One of these from the collection he gave me is a set of 3 of these. They're all great. One of them's this is the Pioneer one. The other one's the United States Forming. If somebody sent me a Doug Lively sign, that'd tickle me more than anything else in the world. Doug stood up. I'll leave you with this. First of all, thanks Courtyard by Marriott, United Fiber. I'm gonna say we got to send Cindy a frying pan, a cast iron skillet.
I'll get right on it.
Can you run one to her office today?
I sure can.
Tomorrow we'll figure it out. But she'll love that cast iron skillet. Plus, if Drew gets out of line, then she can put him back in. But so I'll leave you with this. Doug Lively stands up. It's an education bill. There's a group of senators that had filibustered. They wanted to have another cop in Portageville. But in Portageville, small town, they had to put a tax on the ballot to fund the new cop. So they put the thing on the ballot, right? And you have to have the state pass a law to give you the permission to put this on the ballot. So it's pretty rudimentary thing, not a big deal. Everybody backs the blue, right, until they don't. So they're there, and Doug does his thing, and then these 5 guys grab his bill. It ultimately gets done, but he had to jump through some hoops. It was kind of probably, and Doug is like Cindy. You don't mess with Doug, right? There are senators that'll probably take that in good humor. Not Doug. Wrong. Bad call. So the senator had an education bill coming up, and everybody knew it was coming up, right? And it kind of, you could tell in these big bills when the leadership keeps pushing back when they're going to come up, like they'll bring it up and lay it over so they can come back to it when they want to. They'll dedicate a night to it. And Doug was waiting. I mean, waiting for this education bill. He was going to oppose it big time. Doug knows a little about filibustering. He was not a foreign concept to the senator from Butler. Well, his friend Gary Romine was also against this bill. And everybody knew this was going to come up. So over the weekend, he had fell off a ladder and broke his leg. So Gary comes to the Capitol. And I'd heard he broke his leg because my mama knows his parents. They go to the same church and what have you back home. So Gary, he comes to the Capitol, and I see him in the hallway, and I start laughing, which, you got a friend who's got a broke leg. You don't normally laugh. But if you know the rules of the Senate, a filibuster has to be standing up talking, right? So he's in a wheelchair. I mean, his leg is just darn near tore off. He's fine now, but he was in a bad way. So they wheel him in, and I just start laughing. And I go in his office. I'm like, if that's a fake leg injury, that's the greatest thing I've ever seen. because there was several filibuster. It was really going to be Doug and Gary probably pulling the payload on that. And so Gary could have sat down the whole time in his chair, right? Been the greatest filibuster move of all time. But Gary wasn't going to abuse it because Doug stands up. And this is later in session. And he goes, Mr. President, something, something, something. My wonderfully talented chief of staff, Ashley Bax, has delivered a letter to your office. I'm just going to withdraw the bills I have this. So everybody has their full time limit on the floor. So we can hear as many of my colleagues' bills as we can. I'm just going to be here the next 4 weeks just to kill this one bill. So that's all I'm here for. It took all his hostages and shot him and made it clear I'm only here to kill this. That's all I'm coming here for. So if you get this over, we can get on to other bills that can pass because this will never pass. Of course, the bill didn't pass. It was the greatest filibuster move of all time. Lined his hostages up and Ashley just shot them all. And the bill died. And I can't, it was something with schools. I don't even remember what. But yeah, thank you all for watching. She's great. That's it. I promise you. If you see her at the grocery store or if you see her at Kingdom City filling up her vehicle and you go talk to her, that's what she sounds like. That's just what she is. That's who she sounds like. That's what she sounds like. It is what it is. And a lot of fun to talk to. So anyway, thank you all for watching. Thank the Courtyard. Thank United Fiber. Appreciate you all. And we will see you Sunday for This Week in Missouri Politics.